join me now at the Heard Library at Hartlebury Castle, which is the perfect setting for this interview actually, because this is where Emily Pepys used to come. She wasn't supposed to, as was revealed in her diary, but she used to sneak up here to have a look at some of the books. And back here today is a very special book written by her diary, 171 years old. Here it is in front of us now, leather bound, and as you can imagine, being that old, some of the binding is worn away. Very special to have it here now, all these years later, finally back at home. And Dee Cooper's the one who brought it here. Good morning, Dee.
Good morning.
Dee, you've come all the way from Dorset today, but just tell us how you discovered this diary.
Well, the diary has been well known to me for a very long time, because for many years that I knew it, it was on my grandmother's bookshelf. I dipped into it from time to time and fell in love with it. When my grandmother finally had to give up her home and come and live with us, she said, "You must have this diary because you're the only member of the family that's really interested in it." 60 years I've had it. And really I didn't read it from start to finish until I was working with a young architect who was interested in history. Between us, we worked out where she lived, and we found ourselves at Hartlebury Castle, which at that time was empty and really not in a very good state. And immediately we became interested in the whole history of Emily. And so many years later, we managed to get in touch with the trustees of Hartlebury, and now after 170 years, Emily is coming home.
And what a fantastic day it is as well to see the diary here on the table in front of us. Can we just open it up if that's okay? Oh wow, fantastic. The writing's beautiful, isn't it, as you said?
It is for a 10-year-old. I can't imagine any 10-year-olds nowadays who would be able to write so beautifully. Mind you, there are a few blots and splodges.
And so when you did finally read it for the first time, what was that like?
It was very exciting because suddenly we knew who she was. We'd discovered, obviously by what she'd written, that she was quite well connected. But suddenly to discover that she was the daughter of the bishop made all the difference, because really it opened up a whole view of life for an ecclesiastical family at that time. And we had some big surprises, because in spite of Emily being 10 or 11 and being the bishop's daughter, she was going out to dinner parties and dances with the local gentry, the people they knew and mixed with, and coming back at 2 and 3 in the morning, having danced all night. So this was an eye-opener for us. And she had such a lovely life, because the bishop and his wife were very child-orientated. They wanted their children to grow up in a very happy home.
So obviously you've read through the diary and her writing and then transcribed it so other people could read it too.
That's right. We had a friend who had started a little publishing company, and she read the diary, my transcription, and she said, "That's just what I want to publish. Could I do that?"
So here is the printed version also in front of us, and this is where Mary Arden Davis from Hartlebury Castle comes in.
I came across the diary when I got involved with the castle, and like Dee, I fell in love with Emily. She was entrancing. But of course there's a lovely introduction by Dee at the beginning of the book, and I thought how wonderful if we could find Dee and find the original copy. So I wrote an article and put it in the local paper and in our newsletter for the castle, and nothing happened. And then 6 months later, Dee contacted us, because through her History Society they told her that Hartlebury Castle was looking for her, and so Dee and her husband Giles came up to the castle and showed us the original, and now Dee's made this wonderful gift, and the castle, the book is coming home to the castle. To see it in the original, you can just imagine Emily sitting down writing it so carefully and quietly, because nobody was supposed to know. It wasn't even going to be shown to Mamma, so we get things that perhaps she wouldn't have discussed with Mamma. And really to have the diary here in the castle is going to be wonderful, because I think it's going to be an inspiration for other children, perhaps to keep a diary.
Dee, would you mind just reading a bit of this extract here?
Fine. Herbert and I were left alone at home while Mamma and Papa dined with Mr. Peel. We looked at several nice things in the encyclopedia, such as anatomy, midwifery, etc. But Mamma told me to go to bed at 10 minutes before 9, so we hadn't much time. Herbert and I always go together, let one another into all our secrets that we would not tell anybody else for worlds.
And so Herbert and Emily were up here.
That's right, Herbert is
books.
her brother.
Ah.
So, yes, so they do everything together. They're the youngest of the family. So, Louisa, her older sister, is coming out, so she regards herself as a young lady. And Henry is away at university for most of the time, so he's gone.
But also there you mentioned the Peel family who lived close by, and they had quite a lot of prominent connections, didn't they?
They did indeed. They lived at Worcester, which was one of the big houses locally. Herbert Peel, who was also a clergyman, he was one of the important members of Worcester Cathedral. But his brother was Robert Peel, who at that time was Prime Minister.
I like some of the wording in here as well, things that we'd never use today. Here we are. But we played at Cockamaroo together in the afternoon. Do you have any idea what that is?
It was a board game, and I think it was given to Emily and Herbert as a Christmas present. But of course, they only got their Christmas presents on New Year's Day. Emily says that on Christmas Day, a very melancholy beginning to Christmas Day, as the house has been on fire. About 5 o'clock this morning, I woke and smelt a very strong smell of smoke. And what happened, it was suggested that they went into the Great Hall because of the stone floor. And it said that we should be quite safe in the hall as it was stone. And then we woke up all the maids and everybody and rung the bell at the top of the house, an alarm bell, and everybody was sent out, Charles into the village to bring all the men he could find, and we sent Joseph to Starport for a fire engine and then to Kidderminster, so we got 2. But when the Kidderminster one came, it was too large to come through the hall, so they were obliged to bring up water in buckets. But the Starport one came through the hall and so down to the moat. Fortunately, the fire kept in the schoolroom, and so the engine soon put it out. Papa went into the room soon after it had been put out and nearly fell into the cellar and had to be rescued. He fell through a hole in the floor.
Gosh, it's all very dramatic, isn't it?
And we've still got the bell. It's in the Great Hall and you can see it. And we always say when we have the grand reopening in 2017, we're going to ring the bell.
in sign of celebration instead this time.
Celebration, yes.
And what would that scene have been like, that the fire engines were talking of that time?
Oh, it would have been lovely, because the little Starport one would have come in through the great doors into the Great Hall, and the horses would have drawn the little fire engine through the Great Hall, out the other side, down to the moat to get water to put out the fire. And I think it would be wonderful to see the horses. I don't know if it was pulled by 1 or 2 horses coming through the Great Hall and out the other side.
And also rounding up all the men of the village to get involved and, make sure that the fire didn't spread.
Yes, you can imagine the bell being rung and people waking up, a bit like a fire alarm today, and a burglar alarm, and they'd all have come to the castle and all helped, I'm sure, to put out the fire.
And thank goodness they did, because it's still here today. But there's also quite an interesting extract.
Today we all went to Woodbury Hill in a carriage and fly and riders, 15 of us. We had some capital fun and came home quite safe, and I liked Jane very much. I think I forgot to put down what capital fun we had getting over the stiles with Lady A. Foster. She couldn't manage it a bit and got over so slow and pulled up her petticoats so high that there was no end to the things we saw above her knee. Jane and I did laugh so about it. I thought we should never recover. I love Jane.
I think that's wonderful.
Just shows what sort of personality Emily must have had. 10 years old. Here we are, Monday the 19th of August, back in 1844.
That's right. Yes, yes. She had a great sense of humour and loved making fun of things, as well as being quite sensitive. She says early on that she would quite like to marry a clergyman because she does like to do good to poor people. And then later on she says she likes visiting the poor people in the village as long as they don't cry too much. So she's great fun, Emily.
And so what does this tell us generally about life at that time here at Hartlebury Castle? It must be quite eye-opening, Mary.
I think it shows a very happy, united family, because the bishop educated his sons, the bishop's wife educated her daughters, and they did things together. The bishop actually read them Pickwick Papers at night. So they all sat together, they played together, they shot bows and arrows in the long drive. What else did they do? Oh, they had a boat on the moat, and they walked to Starport to try and buy a boat. And in the end, the bishop ordered one from, I think, London, and it came and they all rowed about on the boat, on the moat. Oh, they created a garden. Mama wanted a new garden, and so they measure the garden and they lay out the flower beds. And I think at that time only one of the gardeners was able to help them.
They had hens. They were very thrilled to be allowed to keep hens. And so the local carpenter, who happened to be my great-great-grandfather, came along and made a hen coop for them. And that was a great excitement. And this was news to me. I had no idea. So it had a lot of personal significance for me as well.